6-minute podcast. Business, study, life.
All right, so we're diving deep today into Scarcity Brain by Michael Easter.
Mm-hmm.
This book really digs into how our brains, like, kind of hardwired for survival, in the old days, are now being kind of tricked by all this abundance we have.
Yeah, like it's almost like our brains haven't quite caught up to the times yet.
Right. Exactly. And, before we really jump in, I think it's important to highlight why this matters. Like, why are we even talking about this scarcity thing?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest takeaway, for me at least, was that understanding how the scarcity loop works can really help us make better choices.
Oh, for sure. Like, especially in a world where we're just bombarded with options constantly. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. How many times have you felt like you need to buy something just because it's on sale?
All the time. Or you got to get the latest gadget or you'll be left behind.
Exactly. So let's break down the scarcity loop thing a little bit more. Easter talks about three main parts to it.
Okay, so like a three-pronged attack on our brains.
Pretty much. So first you have the opportunity, right? Like, let's say you're scrolling through social media. There's just this endless stream of stuff to look at.
Oh, yeah. It's like a fire hose of information and like memes and, whatever else.
Right. And then, because you never know what you're going to see next, that's where the unpredictable rewards come in.
Oh, yeah. The dopamine hits.
Yeah.
Gotta love those little dopamine hits, right?
Exactly. It's that little thrill of the unknown that keeps us hooked.
Okay, so we've got opportunity. We've got unpredictable rewards. What's the third part?
The third part is the quick repeatability. It's so easy to just keep scrolling or clicking or refreshing,
Yeah, like it's almost effortless to just stay in that loop.
Exactly. And what's really crazy is that this whole thing is rooted in our evolution.
Oh, wow. So like caveman times.
Yeah, like way back when our ancestors had to constantly worry about finding food and shelter.
Makes sense. Yeah, like when you're living in a world of scarcity, you got to grab what you can when you can.
Exactly. So indulging when resources were available was actually a smart move.
Like, hey, if I find a whole bunch of berries, I'm going to eat as many as I can right now.
Right. Because who knows when you'll find more.
And it wasn't just about food, right? Like if you could build up a surplus of anything, you could trade it or use it to help your tribe.
Exactly. So it was actually a survival strategy.
Wow. So basically our brains are still stuck in caveman mode, even though we're surrounded by abundance.
Kinda. And that's where things get tricky because those instincts that helped us survive back then can actually backfire now.
Yeah, big time. Like, we're surrounded by tempting food constantly, and we can buy pretty much anything we want with a click of a button.
Right. And it's not just material things either. We can feel scarce in terms of time or attention or even social connections.
Yeah, it's like we're always trying to keep up with everyone else and do everything and be everywhere.
Exactly. And that feeling of scarcity can lead to some pretty unhealthy behaviors.
Okay, so we've talked about the scarcity loop and how it's rooted in our evolution. But Easter also makes this distinction between real scarcity and perceived scarcity.
Right. And that's super important because just because we feel like something is scarce doesn't mean it actually is.
Oh, yeah, like the toilet paper shortage a couple years ago.
Exactly. There was no actual shortage of toilet paper, but the perception of scarcity led to people hoarding it.
Yeah, and that created a real shortage.
Right. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
It's crazy how much our brains can trick us.
It really is. And Easter actually has a whole section in the book about casinos and how they exploit our scarcity brain.
Oh, yeah, I read that part.
Yeah.
It was fascinating how he talked about slot machines being like the perfect embodiment of the scarcity loop.
Totally. Like you have the flashing lights, the sounds, the spinning reels, all creating that sense of opportunity.
Right. And then every spin is a chance to win. So you got that unpredictable reward. And it's so easy to just keep playing.
And you know what Easter says about it? He says, people playing know they will lose as a percent, but they do it anyway. Like buying a cinema ticket, you will never get that money back.
It's true, though, right? Like with a movie ticket, you're getting 2 hours of entertainment. But with a slot machine, it's all about the chase.
The chase and that hope of a big win that keeps you hooked.
So, okay, we've learned all about this scarcity loop and how it can really mess with our decision-making. But what do we do about it? Like, how do we break free from this cycle?
Well, I think the first step is awareness, right? Now that we know about the scarcity loop and how it works, we can start to recognize it in our own lives.
So like being more mindful of our thoughts and feelings and actions.
Exactly. And then once we're aware of it, we can start to question those feelings of urgency or that fear of missing out.
And like ask ourselves, do I really need this? Or am I just being tricked by my scarcity brain?
Right. And what's really cool is that this awareness doesn't have to be about deprivation. It's actually about freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah, freedom to choose what truly matters to us and freedom from that constant feeling of lack.
Wow, I like that. Like we can retrain our brains to focus on abundance instead of scarcity. So to wrap things up, I think the biggest takeaway from this deep dive is that understanding our scarcity brain is crucial in today's world.
Absolutely. It's like having a secret weapon against all the marketing and societal pressures that try to manipulate us.
Right, and it's about empowering ourselves to make conscious choices that align with our values.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder what would happen if we all started to question our scarcity brain.
Right, like what kind of world could we create if we all focused on abundance instead of lack?
Something to think about for sure.
Definitely. All right, well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into scarcity brain. It's been a real eye-opener, and I hope you all learned something new today.
Yeah, it's been great chatting about this stuff.
And remember to keep those scarcity brains in check.
Absolutely. We've got the power to choose.
That's right. Until next time.
See ya.
6-Minute Podcast. Business, study, life.